Good morning. My name is Dr. Angelica Hardee. I serve as Vice President of Health Strategy at the American Heart Association. And I'm excited to be here today to talk about something personal, but also something that is actually impacting a lot of us today around the world, and particularly women. So you may have heard of the American Heart Association, and you may have heard of Research Goes Red, or obviously the color of my blazer today, which we often wear to promote heart health awareness. Research Goes Red is our an awareness initiative focused on getting more women involved in cardiovascular research. It's specifically important to me, and specifically this year of my life, as I tell you my why and my story related to cardiovascular health. 30 years of age is typically a milestone for everyone. I celebrated my 30th birthday a couple months ago, and in my family, it's a huge milestone for a couple reasons. When my mother was 30 years old, she was pregnant with me, and at that time, she was so excited that she was having a girl. And in that time, she got to her third trimester when she found out that she had cardiomyopathy. In that time, she ended up being bedridden, and she had to have her heart monitored until I was born healthy on June 10th of that year. She was so excited, but unfortunately, we did not get to meet when I was born. My mother had to stay in the hospital for another 2 months in order for them to continue to monitor her heart and to make sure that she was healthy enough and strong enough to take care of her daughter. Thankfully, my mom did come home, and she celebrated her 60th birthday when I celebrated my 30th. Unfortunately, there's another story in my family that wasn't so successful. At 30 years old, my Aunt Ramona, affectionately known as Mona, had a few children. I actually have tons of cousins, actually. But she suffered the similar fate with cardiomyopathy in many of her pregnancies. After she was treated and supposedly cured from a cardiomyopathy complications. Unfortunately, 6 days before her 31st birthday, my Aunt Mona didn't wake up. They said that the complications from pregnancy and cardiomyopathy impacted her heart too much, and she died from heart failure. I often think, what if? What if at 30 years old with my Aunt Mona, was there enough research? Was treatment right? Did she have the right diagnoses? Unfortunately, we don't know that from years ago, but I'm here to try to change that for me and my community. 30 years does not have to be the statistic of when women have heart complications in my family. And I hope that the Research Goes Red initiative helps that. Specifically, heart health, and actually heart research, specifically cardiovascular health research, has never really represented women. Heart disease is often known as an old man's disease, and recently we realized that 1 in 3 women actually die from heart failure or heart disease. We specifically have to examine how this happens, how our mothers, our sisters, the daughters are impacted by cardiovascular health, and how we can change that. Research Goes Red is just that. We're working to specifically identify what treatment, risks, symptoms, and diagnoses we can further examine to help women in our community. Historically, we have only represented a small percentage. 30 years ago, it was actually around 10 to 15% of us represented in cardiovascular health. In 2020, we are now at 38% of women actually represented in cardiovascular clinical studies. But that's not enough. That's even less for women of color. So we still have much work to do. With the generous support of BI3 Foundation, we are working to address this specifically in the city of Cincinnati and Hamilton County. Unfortunately, our maternal mortality rates are poor, and we are really working to address both maternal morbidity and maternal mortality so that cardiovascular disease is not the number one killer here in our community and nationwide. We are specifically doing a study on cardiovascular health and the identification of how reproductive and cardiovascular health correlate with one another. We want to identify why nature's stress test, which is often what pregnancy is referred to, has taken so many mothers from their family, and how we can change that. I took the survey, uncannily, in the 30th year of my life, where this is extremely important. I've never told the story about how this year of 30 has really impacted my family, but I feel like it's kind of fate, right? I'm recruiting for something that has impacted my family so greatly. We have to identify how we can address this issue. Dr. Mariel Jessup, who's the Chief Medical Officer for the American Heart Association, stated that women's first interaction with the healthcare system is actually during pregnancy, their first major interaction. And often that is the time where we identify underlying issues, complications, and things of that nature. But unfortunately, the next time women see healthcare professionals is often when they've had a heart attack or stroke. That is a huge gap from when women are in childbearing years and have their first visit to when they are suffering from a cardiovascular event and hopefully not having their last visit. My call of action for you today is to help us. Help us tell your mother, your sister, your friends, your aunts to be a part of this research study locally. With the generous support of BI3 Foundation, they have helped us invest specifically to identify what we can do here with our healthcare providers, with our community partners, with our neighbors, to figure out how we can address this issue locally. We have done a lot of work in this. We've worked with a lot of local community organizations. We've sent this QR code. You may have seen it on Facebook and Instagram recently as we've identified our digital recruitment. But when you sign onto this page or send the QR link to your family and friends, please tell them your why. I always think, what if my Aunt Mona was here today, and what if I actually had pictures of my mom when I was first born? You always see those smiling videos or pictures when you're first born that I don't actually have, unfortunately, because of cardiovascular events that have run in my family related to pregnancy. So identify your why, send this to someone you love, and help us really engage in research in our community. Help us better understand the impact of reproductive health and what it has on women's health in our community and our heart by taking our survey today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hardee. Thank you for sharing that intimate story with us. It really touched my heart, and I hope that no one else out there has to deal with, having a baby and not being able to be there with it in those first moments of life. I would like to ask you, speaking about cardiovascular health, what are some everyday ways, our audience can pick up and do to really improve their cardiovascular health?
Yes, so I can tell you a lot of ways, but I think one that we don't speak about immediately, and I think it's going to be my first one for a reason, would be stress. So stress is so important. It's something that often we don't measure effectively because we all show signs of stress very different. But as we continue to examine maternal health and as we continue to examine the correlation between that and reproductive as well as cardiovascular health, stress continues to rise. How do we identify how we're managing our stress on a daily basis, how we're making sure we are taking care of ourselves? And it goes right to what Stevie had mentioned earlier, like how are we making sure that we're managing our work-life balance, our family, or as Stevie mentioned, integration, which I will start using. But that is so important. We often talk about eating healthy, being physically active. All of those are so important. But if you really start to think about how we work on ourselves, how we manage stress, how we eat healthy, and how we really identify how we can think about our cardiovascular health actually at an early age. That's really, really important as we start to examine and really address our cardiovascular health.